welcome back to the shed. In today's video is going to be part 2 of the chair restoration. Today's video we're going to be upholstering the base of the chair. Hope you enjoy. The technique I'm going to be using today is the same process that I've seen Paul Sellers do in a video. I think it works well and it's nice, quick and easy to do. So what I've done with this piece is I've marked the top and I marked this is the back here, so I already know. What I've done is pre-cut this with about a 3mm gap between front and back. And I did take measurements from both sides because this is a little bit out of square, but you can just do that with this sort of thing. So next what we have to do is get the middle of this piece of wood. Next what we need to do is get the measurement on this inside corner and this inside corner here and transfer that onto that board. So we use the tape measure from there to there, and we have 315mm. So we take that 315mm and we take 3mm off it. Now that is just, again, for allowance of movement and whatnot, just so it's not too tight when we come to put that fabric on. 315mm minus 3mm, 312mm. We need to get that centered on our piece of wood now. So we want to make sure we're doing that on our back side because that's where we took our measurement from. If that's 156, measurement there, 312. Then we grab a square and we square this measurement up. So next what we need to do is get this measurement in here from this back rail up to the front of the leg here. So I'm just going to use the rule on my square here, and the measurement that I've got here is exactly 10mm. So let's go ahead and transfer that 10mm back onto the board. We can do 10mm straight on here. And we can just do a little finger measurement from that straight over there. This board's already square, so we can just bring our square in there and our square in here. So now if we look at this, we have those exact internal corners from the chair. Now what we need to do is center this up on here. Now that it's center, level here, and we run that up on the front on both sides. So like magic, we've got those lines now squared across on the top, just here and here. Now we can put this to the side for a moment, and we want the measurement between the back leg here and this inside of the front leg. So once again we can use a tape measure, and that is 360mm. 360mm. So what we're doing is lining that tape measure up with the back of where we joined the cross line at the back there. And we mark 360. I don't want these square cutouts for the foam. So what we're going to do is come in with our square and we're going to mark it at a 45 degree. Now if you got one of these sort of squares, this angle is always a 45 degree. So we can bring it in here, line it up onto the dot, and we do that on all 4 corners. So now that we've got those marked, we're going to go ahead and cut those angles off. So I have this set up in the vise so I can see the line. Obviously you're not going to be able to see it. And I've set this upright because it's always easier to cut straight. So I've got this angle sitting almost upright to make it easier for me. Now if we look at this, you can see there's still a little bit of line there, and I'll use a hand plane later to come back dead onto that before we set it back up there to do the next bit of measurement, because I always like to use a hand plane to come to my line. This is a hand plane, the basic one from Bunnings that I restored, so you can use that for this. You just want to be on a nice fine shaving setting. So you really want to be using a short soled plane for this. You want to line it up where it needs to be up in here with these lines, so you're roughly finding the middle, but just somewhere where it's going to sit nice and square. And you just want to look at the reveal. You reveal along the back, so that little gap that you got, and you want them to be roughly square and even, enough to allow that fabric to go in there. And once you've got that, you want to come in and we're going to measure these angles underneath. So what we want to do is get a pencil up under there, draw the line in. You can see where the pencils come in. Now on this side it just needs to be across, but I need to follow this in a straight line right through on both sides, because in here we have these little stops, and that prevents me from drawing the line right up into the corner. Now what we have to do is cut these two pieces off. Now, I'm not going to use the tenon saw for that, it's too long a cut for that, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a crosscut saw, because unless you're using quite a fine tooth saw, I find you always have to use a crosscut saw on plywood, because you're always going across some of the grains, and if you want a nice, tidy, clean cut, a crosscut saw is the way to go. So let's go ahead and set up for that. Now obviously this time those measurements are on the bottom, so you can see the top. You can't see my line, but I'm just going to cut here, and I'm going to cut just off the line again, and then we'll obviously hand plane back to that line again. What I'm going to do here is just use my tenon saw to start this, as it's a little bit awkward to start. And my tenon saw starts just a little bit easier. Alright, now that I've got that started, we're going to go to the crosscut saw. So I'm going to try and cut as close to the line here as I can, but also trying to leave it. We'll see how it goes, and we'll level it all out with the hand plane afterwards. Since the fabric's going to be going over the top of this, you don't have to be 100% accurate, but accurate is better. So you can hear that vibration. What I need to do is just bring this down a little lower in the vise to stop that vibration occurring. And you also do much shorter strokes, just getting down to the edge. So this little bit where it snapped off, you can go with your hand plane like that to remove it, or you can just use a chisel. But you can see you can remove it pretty quick with the hand plane. So now that we've done that, we need to get it back up into the chair and see that it fits. I've got a few problems here. It doesn't quite fit. I'm going to have to see where it's sticking. So my problem here is that the board is a little too tight all the way around. Even though I made allowances, apparently there was a little bit more of a discrepancy than I realized, which means that I just need to take some material off. So on all these sides here, to allow for that fabric to fit, we're going to have to take a little bit of plywood off. Now, I have a little bit of allowance in the back here, but even that is a little bit tight. So what I'm going to do is try to take 1.5 millimeters off both sides with the hand plane. So now you can see that this whole piece is floating around. I took 10 strikes with the hand plane. You're just going to have to judge it by eye until you get the reveal and the gap that you're looking for. Now in my case, I was obviously looking for about 1.5 mil all the way around to allow for the thickness of material. If your material is a little bit thicker, you might need a little bit more of an allowance, but at this stage in the build is where you can fix it. Now, it's better that it's a little too loose than a little too tight, because those blocks under the bottom, you ram screws in to hold this in place. so it won't float around if you take a little too much off. So now what you want to do is take this piece back out, and you want to take some light chamfers on the top corners and some slightly heavier chamfers around on the bottom, just so when we put the material on we don't have sort of a hard point up against the fabric which could cut it after we've upholstered and with people using the chair. I think that's a pretty good chamfer, about a 45 and about 5 passes. So we're going to do that all the way around. So what I've done here is just put a piece of MDF down. If you've got one of those cutting mats, that's a good idea. I've just done this because my workbench is a little bit dirty and it keeps it clear. So I have the green seating foam here. It's 2 inches thick, and we're going to line up our base on here, and we're just going to trace a line around the outside. Now along this edge it's pretty straight and it's already lined up, so we don't have to do too much with that. So what I got here is just a nice sharp knife, and I'm going to use this board just to help cut this through here, just as a reference place. So you can go through just one fell swoop, make sure it's cut, and get your excess out of the way from the thickest side here. But you just want to make sure your knife is nice and sharp. If your angles are off a little bit, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure down on it, so you're not really going to notice it. But as long as it's close enough. I have seen some other videos where this is done, and obviously I'm not an expert at upholstery at all, and they take these corners off. Other people don't. That's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and just leave these on here for this one, as I'm a beginner at this and I don't fancy cutting any more foam than I have to. So I now have my piece of plywood, top of it on top of the foam we cut, now sitting square in the middle of my piece of fabric. Now, when I looked this up, I like to have a larger allowance, and a lot of upholsterers that I've seen videos of online have 4 to 6 inches overhang just to allow you to really pull the fabric when you're actually putting this together. I have an electric staple gun here. This is a Bosch one. It's been around for a long time. You can use the hand ones if you want as well, and you'll definitely need a hammer to knock those in because they don't tend to go in as far. But this is what I'm going to be using, as it's what I have available. Now the first point on these is to bring the front and back up normally, and you want to pull that up as tight as you can get it, and on a little bit of an angle, so it's just holding it, but the staple's still sticking up so you can pull it back out. This is basically just a pre-tensioning staple to hold the fabric, and you can release it later on if it leaves any unsightly marks on the fabric or pulls that you don't like. Again, pull this in as tight as you can, holding it. Now we want to come around and do the same from the sides. Pull that up as tight as you can. Now that the others are attached, you can actually pull this a lot tighter. So you see how the staple gun's on an angle here, and it leaves it up in here, but it holds your fabric from pulling. And now we can look on this side and just see that it's sort of sitting here evenly, and you can see that it's sort of quite evenly pulled, that fabric. So now what the go is to work the front and the back. Now you normally, from what I've seen, you work the front first, and you want to tension and pull it across on an angle towards this corner. And we just add staples in here, so pull like that. Work the back of it, but once we've got that, across across on that angle, sort of holding it. So you can just smooth it out, and then when we've got there, we can see this back edge. I pulled it a little too much here and here, so they are going to have to come out and be relaxed a little bit, because you see these pull marks, you don't want them. Just like we've got these pull marks here. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and do the rest of it first, and then we'll come back and see what we can do to fix that up. So again, what I'm going to do is pull this fabric and try and just smooth it out. So you see how it's sort of a smooth transition through here? That's what we're looking for. Now if you struggle with just the foam, you can put Dacron on here that actually helps to smooth that out a little bit more. You can see there's a few pulls here that we'll have to even out a little bit, but wait until we've got all the corners done and see how it looks, and then you can actually free some of those staples to release the pressure where there's some of these pulls. So now we're going to move on and do these corners, and I'm not going to remove any material just yet. I'm going to try pulling this corner just to see how it sits. So you can see how we have sort of one little fold there and one there. And I'm just going to put a staple on there to hold that. So you can see that that's sort of holding the pressure on that corner. So we want to go ahead and do that on all the corners. Before we finish off these corners and cut some of this material out, what I wanted to do is go around and look where some of these pulls are. So these are just sort of temporary staples that are in here currently. We can go ahead and put more permanent ones in a little bit, and they're going to come in a little bit closer here. See how we've got this one pull just here? It sort of dips in a little bit too much. That was that initial staple we put in. I want to pull that staple out, and see how that's sort of relaxed back in there now? It's sort of all evened out there. We can go ahead and add a staple that's closer to the edge here. Now we have another pull just here, which means this staple here, we're going to have to try and pull that one out and just even that out too. Before I do that, so I've just run a series of 3 staples behind that to hold that nicely, so when we release this, it's not going to pull it all off. I know this is not the easiest to see against this fabric. It doesn't show up the best on my camera. But you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 along here. This is where we took out that original one here. And I just want to take this one out here. Screwdriver and all pliers, whatever you need to. And you can see that that's sort of relaxed that extra tension there. So we can go ahead, put one more in there, that's held. I do 1, 2, 3. So pretty much we've got this whole piece here that we don't need, so we can just cut a big square out of this right up near that staple we put right on that corner, and then just finish the rest off with some angles and pull it so it doesn't cause any problems right on that corner. Pretty much there. Just here. Whack one there. That's to hold that side. Now I want to pull it in on this side for the same. And I'm getting there right by the corner, so you can see this is nice and sort of smooth through here. There's no bulging here. Then essentially I'm just going to pull the rest. Cut that out. And I'm going to cut that bit out too. So any little folds, I'm just going to staple them down so stay out of the way. Cut that square of material out. And a little bit of this excess here. I know there's also some other ways where you can do it, where you can just pull this tongue of material on the top there and you leave a piece in here. So kind of go to there and it's just leaving a little tag on the top that you pull over. So you get in here like this, staple that in. Right up in under here, and that's so it's pulling it all on there. There's a little bubble there, and then you can get this material here like this. So now what I can do here is come through and remove this material. You can remove some of these in staples if they're not needed, but I don't think they're really going to cause a problem. So we can just go along and remove any bits of fabric that are still loose and not needed. So now we have the moment of truth. Does it fit? It does. And I think it looks bloody great. So I hope you have some understanding of, as an amateur, how to upholster one of these seats if you found one to restore it, and that you can actually get a good outcome even if you don't particularly know what you're doing like I was. Just watch a few YouTube videos and you'll get the hang of it. So if you like this video and you'd like to check out some other restoration videos, please check out the playlist just down here. And I'd just like to thank you for watching. Bye for now.